Welcome to the May 10th, 2021 Education Committee and Supplementary Regular Board Meeting of the Lower Merion Board of School Directors. Due to COVID restrictions, this meeting is being held in the Lower Merion High School auditorium. As we continue our return to in-person meetings, we appreciate your patience moving forward, and I would also like to remind you that tonight's meeting will be live streamed and available via Zoom during the transition. The board believes it's in its best interest and the best interest of the students of the district to hear comments from district residents. Public comment can be given tonight in person and via the chat feature, which will be read by district personnel. This meeting is being video recorded with sound for public broadcast. All participants joining via Zoom will be muted upon entry. Before we begin the official business of tonight's meeting, I'd like to take a moment to note that this is National School Nurse Week, and to recognize the nurses of our Lower Merion School District Health Services team. Our nurses have been nothing short of amazing and heroic throughout the pandemic. Starting in March 2020, immediately after the shutdown, they hand-delivered medicines that had been left at the schools to the homes of students who needed them and couldn't pick them up. They supervised the safety of the technology and meal distribution and last year's graduation and awards ceremonies. They have answered countless questions from students and staff about COVID, quarantines, isolation, and vaccines. They have run our ACID assurance testing and our contact tracing efforts, personally reaching out to every staff member and family impacted by a positive case or quarantine, working nights and weekends for months on end. Terry Quinlan, our lead supervisor for student health and safety, is a leader at the county level among all the schools, was instrumental in bringing ACID and our vaccination clinic to the district, and in ensuring that the programs run smoothly. Now that our students are back, our nurses are doing all this COVID-related work on top of their regular duties, administering medicines in schools and treating the regular illnesses and injuries that find their way to the health suites each day. So on behalf of my fellow board members and the entire Lmsd community, I want to offer our sincere and tremendous gratitude to our wonderful school nurses for all that they have done and continue to do to protect the health of our students during this unprecedented time. The first item on our agenda is a presentation regarding the 5 to 8 transition plan. I'll turn this over to Mr. Copeland now.
Thank you, Ms. Klein. Before I give a brief introduction to this, those watching via stream may know that we have emergency use authorization for vaccines for students 12 to 15. We've been working with the same Eric's Pharmacy over the last several weeks. We know that if you tried to get on earlier, the registrations were taken. They've opened up with some additional registrations. So if you want, you can take some time off from or somebody else can, while you're streaming, get a registration. So we're really encouraging people to take part in that. Moving forward, the presentation that you're going to see this evening is largely one that was presented at CCOB. It is about our plans or the administration's recommendation for plans for transitioning from our current 6 through 8 middle schools to 3 5 through 8 middle schools. You'll see this evening that it's going to be my recommendation and that of the administration to move forward with the fall of 2022 going to a 5 through 8 program for all students. We get to this not in a second or a minute, but over a long period of time. Lower Merion School District's enrollment has seen its highest peak in 40 years. And our enrollment projections prior to COVID were to take us to around 9,300 students. We looked at a multitude of plans, including adding on to schools and reconfiguring grade levels. In 2018, the board began the process of acquiring land to build a new middle school at 1860 Montgomery Avenue, with the intent of that school being grades 5 through 8. Over the course of the last year, even during the pandemic, the administration has been working tirelessly with committees around this, and that has made even more firm the belief that we need to move to a 5-8 school to deal with overcrowding, but also to make sure that our students have an equal experience as they move through the districts. So tonight, we hope to, in an official board meeting, put this together. You'll see that there's going to be an opportunity to give feedback to the administration and the board before the board makes a final decision later in June. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant to the Superintendent, Megan Schaefer.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to take us through, I like to think of this presentation in two parts, and it's important to think about the second part as I'm presenting my part, because the second part is really about reimagining the K-4, 5-8 experience for students, and so that is tied to how we thought about the transition into the new school. So there are a number of different lenses in which we looked at this opportunity for our students, which is, I think, is a very exciting one, a beautiful new school that's going to be built for our students to enjoy for many, many years. We looked at, again, from the perspective of the students, from the perspective of families, teachers, and staff, our programming, and also operational. So I'm going to take us through a little bit of history here. This is one slide that represents many slides that were shared publicly back in November of 2019. And really what this represents is the various scenarios that we looked at in thinking about how do we transition students to this new middle school and transition to this new realignment of schools from a K-5, 6-8 elementary middle school configuration to a K-4, did I say 5-8? I meant 6-8 configuration to a K-4, 5-8 configuration. So very soon after the decision was made to build a new middle school, we did start considering these transition scenarios in accordance with the feeder patterns that had been decided at that time. So if you look at that top band, I'm going to go through this very briefly just to orient you to this, these ideas that we had in terms of transition. And also you'll note that there's a link at the bottom of the slide that takes you to the full presentation that, again, was presented back in November of 2019. So initially, we considered, in scenario one, moving our 5th graders up to the middle school in that first year together with the 6th grade class. So the 5th and 6th graders would be the only class going to the new middle school. And as you can see there, both of our existing middle schools would also increase to a 5-8 enrollment, allowing for some room in our elementary schools in a K-4 configuration there. And what that red band, why they're all highlighted across the middle schools when we examined that scenario, was that it didn't alleviate the enrollment pressures that we saw at the middle schools, in particular Welsh Valley and Bala-Cynwyd. And our new middle school was significantly underutilized with only 2 classes in there. So it was less than probably half capacity in that first year. So we took a look at trying to address those issues at the middle school level in scenario 2. So we said, what if our 5th graders stayed at some of those feeding schools in that first year? Would that alleviate some of those enrollment pressures? So in scenario 2, which again, if you read horizontally across that slide, you see that we have Belmont Hills, Penn Valley, Marion, and Cynwyd all at K-5 configurations, with the Welsh Valley and BC at the 6-8 configuration. Again, Gladwin and Penwyn would remain K-4, and the new middle school would be 5-6. So when we played out that scenario, again, the red highlighting indicates areas where those enrollment pressures shift. So while we alleviated some of the pressures at Welsh Valley, you can see Penn Valley now has, we exceed the facility cap capacity for that school. Also with Marion and Cynwyd, you can see with a K-5 configuration in that year, we exceed the enrollment, the facility capacity for those buildings, as well as pressures remain at BC, and again, the new middle school is underutilized. Again, trying to address those pressures, we looked at another scenario, which is similar to scenario 1, except that in scenario 3, We moved the Welsh Valley and BC students who would be rising 7th graders, who were former Gladwin and Penn Wynne students, into the new middle school. That allows us to build a 5-7 configuration for that new middle school. So you can see there, across the elementaries, we have a K4 grade pattern. Across the middle schools, we have a varying pattern, but closer to a unified pattern, with the new middle school at 5-7 and BC and Welsh Valley at 5-8. Again, the red indicates that we see still some overcrowding at BC in that transition year, and the middle school, again, is underutilized as a 5-7 building. And that brought us to scenario 4, which is to, in year 1, transition all of our buildings at the elementary level to a K4 configuration, and our middle schools all to a 5-8 configuration. And from the standpoint of facility capacity, you can see that there's no red indicated in any of those schools, so that each of those buildings is now below the facility capacity at that point in time. I should note that scenarios 1 through 3 would eventually get to scenario 4, but those are all multi-year strategies, so that you're going to see the lessening of the capacity issues year over year, but it will take several years to get to scenario 4. So with that, at this point in time, the administration is recommending a scenario to move forward with scenario 4 that allows us to open the new middle school at full capacity with grades 5 through 8 at each of those middle schools, and transition all elementary schools and middle schools to the reimagined K4 5-8 student experience, which again, it's an important part of this presentation, and will be led by Dr. McGloin and Mr. Hall here, who are here this evening. We wanted to just take a look and orient the public to the infographic that we had sent to all families. So what's represented here is basically what's in that infographic that was received. It was in a vertical alignment. Here it's in a horizontal alignment. And just briefly to take you through the experience as it relates to the student's perspective, which is, of course, what's first and foremost important to us. So if you think about today's current third graders, who next year will be in 4th grade, we're working on important community building activities that they'll be able to do and engage with, thinking about what their experience will be as they enter a new school as 5th graders. There'll also be those types of activities will be together with our rising 5th graders, so within Gladwin or within Penn Wynne or any of our elementary schools where our current 3rd graders will be rising 4th graders, will get to engage in activities and support a positive transition for all students. And then as these 3rd graders enter 5th grade in 22-23, they would enter the new middle schools in accordance with the new attendance boundaries. So I'm just going to go through this once, even though this is reflected in each slide. So our former Belmont Hills and Penn Valley elementary students would be moving on to Welsh Valley. Our former Marion and Kenwood 3rd graders would be moving on to BC. And our former Gladwin and Penn Wynne students will be moving to the new middle school in 22-23 when it opens. So similarly, for our 4th graders, our current 4th graders will be 5th graders next year. They'll engage in those building-based activities with their peers, their grade peers, and also their peers and now 3rd graders, then 4th graders. Then in 22-23, those 4th graders as 5th grader, or I'm sorry, those 5th graders as 6th graders will be moving into the new middle school, or the middle schools in accordance with the new attendance boundaries. And I'll note that we're going to talk about some of the details of what those community building activities will be like for those students in the second part of the presentation. Our our current fifth graders, who will be sixth graders next year, will attend the middle school that, in accordance with the current attendance boundaries, and then will engage, as I said, in activities that will support a transition, especially for those students who will be moving from Welsh Valley and BC to the new middle school. And then as seventh graders, again, all of our students who are then sixth graders will be rising seventh graders in accordance with the new attendance boundaries, meaning that those students who are in Gladwin and then Welsh Valley would be moving to the new school, and those students that were in Penwyn and then in Ballackin would be moving to the new school. And finally, from the sixth graders' point of view, which I tell people I think about this from the lens of my son, who's in sixth grade now, and thinking through what it would be like for him as a rising seventh grader next year, and thinking about the types of activities that would be meaningful and important for students to be engaging in as they get ready to take on that leadership role in a new middle school. So it's important for us to focus on those, I think, those students' experience and prepare them to be that first class that gets to enter and graduate from the new middle school. So I think these can be really exciting times for this particular class. And so as seventh graders, we'll ready them for that experience, and then they will move to the new middle school as eighth graders. Again, those Gladwin students that have been at Welsh Valley for sixth and seventh grade, and our Penwyn students who have been at BC for sixth and seventh grade as well. And just to give a little bit of a snapshot of what it looks like from the district's point of view and the readiness or the steps that we need to take to be ready for that transition. Obviously, I've mentioned the importance and attention to the community building activities and developing camaraderie among those future cohorts. We need to finalize the K4 and 5-8 programming models, appoint a new middle school leader, bring our staff along and into the new programming that will be consistent across our middle school experience and across the reimagined K4 experience. We'll need to hire new staff as needed, obviously finalize the construction and the interior design pieces. So these are highlights. Obviously, there are a lot of many details that aren't reflected here, but a lot to do in the 21-22 school year. And then as as we turn to the 22-23 school year, we will be opening that new middle school at full capacity. That is our intent, and transition all of our students to that reimagined K4, 5-8 experience, so that we are able to alleviate crowded conditions in all of our existing elementary and middle schools. And when we did, I've referenced the capacity, building capacity, in thinking about the transitions that will be occurring. On this slide, what's reflected is in that first year of 22-23, you can see that our projected enrollment against the building capacity for each of the schools is under the capacity, except slightly over at Penwyn, but probably not enough to need to maintain modulars there, which is another result of the building of the new school, is that we will be able to remove modulars from existing sites, or we will not have to add modulars that may be necessary if we select another scenario that I discussed earlier. So what that does is eliminate costs ranging from $200,000 to over $1 million, depending on the scenario, that are associated with maintaining modular classrooms. And finally, from sort of an operational perspective, transportation is something we talk about a lot, and it's critical to how we are able to not only operate our education program, but does drive how we arrange our programming and scheduling. And the scenarios, by virtue of the fact that some of them are create different alignments, the transportation costs can rise rather significantly because of the need to or the redundancies that those scenarios create. So for example, if we have a 5-6 school and a 5-8 school and we're transporting students from the same attendance zone to those schools, we will need to, essentially double the bus runs in order to get the students to those different locations, even if they're coming from the Okay, now we're back from the same neighborhood. So while the addition of a new school to our system does increase transportation costs of approximately $3.6 million, adding additional complexities by looking at either scenarios 1, 2, or 3, we will increase transportation costs by approximately $1 to $2 million as a result of needing to, again, accommodate families that may be coming from the same neighborhood and then traveling to different schools. So the final point on this slide is also our very real concern that we would not be able to even find drivers to accommodate those scenarios, given that they are temporary in nature. So to bring on, a dozen or 24 drivers for a period of anywhere from 1 to 3 years is probably will be very difficult, if not impossible, to do because we struggle to find drivers even now to staff the fleet that we have. So we're very concerned about the feasibility of even doing that. So in closing my part, I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Hall, who's going to get into the more exciting stuff.
Thank you, Megan, for taking the time to carefully review some of the operational considerations that have resulted in the recommendation that we're putting forth in front of the board today. I will be talking about the programmatic considerations specifically, and our charge is really simple. It's to design and deliver a world-class educational experience academically, socially, and emotionally for all of our middle-level learners here in Lower Merion School District. No big deal, right? And so our North Star, as we work toward that, continues to be the strategic plan all forward. And so we've used that as our guiding vision going forward, and we've created a K through 4 committee and also a grade 5 through 8 committee of teacher leaders and administrators. Both of those committees have been meeting regularly, as often as once a week, but always as frequently, at least as twice a month over the course of the past year. And going forward, the consensus was overwhelming. Really, when we asked the 5 through 8 committee to evaluate all of the scenarios through a programmatic lens, to a person, each of them felt an overwhelming consensus that what best positions us to be able to deliver on our promise to our students and to our families from a programmatic perspective is the recommendation that we're putting forth today. Dr. McGloin has done a wonderful job over the course of the past almost a year now of keeping us squarely aligned to all forward. And in particular, there are 2 bold statements of strategic intent: transformative curriculum and student-driven schools. Dr. McGloin has been challenging us to consider everything that we've been recommending from a programmatic perspective and to ensure that all of our recommendations are squarely aligned with those considerations. Our first order of business as a committee was to develop a mission statement. The mission statement you see in front of you, and you can see that we've highlighted what emerged as 3 collective commitments. One focused on building relationships, another focused on cultivating curiosity among young people, and the third collective commitment is developing intellectual independence. Developmental psychologist James Comer once said that no significant learning occurs without a significant relationship. And so that's why we name building relationships first and foremost as a priority for our 5-8 schools. We are teaching adolescents. You can see that the last statement in the mission statement speaks to our commitment to developing each adolescent's unique identity, honoring that, affirming that, making sure that each adolescent in our building feels known and loved and respected. And so building relationships is first and foremost. We want to cultivate curious learners. We want to engage students very, very deeply, beyond mere compliance. And we're committed to ensuring that every child that walks through our doors is prepared to go forth and serve ultimately. How do we do that? We ensure that they're armed and they have the capacity to, that they have some skills, a set of academic skills, social and emotional learning competencies that will position them well to take advantage of life's challenges, whatever they choose to pursue going forward. So this is our mission statement. And I'm going to speak specifically about building relationships and what it means in terms of this recommendation that we're making, that we open at full capacity in September 2022. Our task as we open the new 5-8 building, and our task at Bala Cynwyd and Walsh Valley Middle Schools, is to generate momentum to make these instructional shifts at all 3 buildings. That's our task. We need to leverage the new relationships that we need to form at each building. There'll be considerable amount of staff turnover. That's just inevitable because of our need to staff the new building. We also need to leverage the new configuration at the new building to lean into and generate and sustain energy around these instructional and programmatic shifts. And we also need to deepen collaboration across the district for our content teams, also for our interdisciplinary teams. And when I think as an instructional leader about the number one challenges and that could really undermine our ability to lead into these shifts and be successful, staff turnover over a period of 2 to 3 to 4 years, considerable turnover that's pervasive over the course of each year for a few years, is the number one challenge that I can think of. There's just no way to build a collective, cohesive school mission and vision and buy-in around expectations and culture if everyone's not in the room. It's impossible to do that. And so that's the reason that I'm really excited about the recommendation we're putting forth to the board today. The new middle school has a really unique opportunity. It's an exciting opportunity for that school leader to build the culture from the ground up without the threat of needing to displace any existing peer groups or cultures or relationships in that building. It's also an opportunity for the Bala Cynwyd and Walsh Valley staffs. Culture, of course, starts with the staff. We need to create an environment that's safe for all the staff members, where staff feel connected and where staff feel a collective sense of efficacy for improving the student experience and delivering it at a really high level. And I would say that our ability to build the collective staff culture at once, all together, to ensure that there's shared accountability and buy-in is really, really important to ensuring that we can deliver on our promise to students and families. I'll talk about transition a little bit. Megan spoke quite a good deal about how we're going to be setting ourselves up for success in terms of supporting each and every student, grades 5-8, in terms of a successful transition to the new program, to the new building. I've worked in a number of school districts in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, so when I say what I'm going to say next, I think I speak from an informed perspective. Lower Merion's transition program, 5 to 6 and 8 to 9, is second to none. It's super high to that opinion. I think that we do a lot to really ensure that we know each student academically, socially, and emotionally, to ensure that we're able to build partnerships with parents and work in tandem with them, in partnership with them, to ensure the success of their students. There are things that we do for the whole group from a general education perspective. Everything from information nights and visits to the building to see our academic program as well as our extracurricular programs. We also tour students, and then we also work really individually with each family for students that have specialized plans like IEPs, 504s, or GIEPs. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. McGloin to talk a little bit about cultivating curiosity and building students' intellectual independence.
Thanks, Mr. Hall. So, as Mr. Hall mentioned, there's a few statements in our mission statement that really stood out to making a great student experience. In addition to that independence, it's cultivating curiosity. We're having a lot of conversations about what the program should look like for our students in both K-4 and 5-8. And one thing that keeps coming up is that consistency in programmatic experience across all of our buildings, K-4 and 5-8, and all of our grade levels, and reimagining that programmatic experience so that we have interdisciplinary approaches to instruction. Students can see the connection across all of the content areas. For example, in 6th grade, the idea of teaching about different cultures in every single content area. In 7th grade, STEM, the idea of maybe having STEM be that underpinning theme throughout the whole entire time. To make this happen, we need space, we need time, and we need configurations. And so what I mean by saying that is if we're going to do something where students are hands-on, project-based, experience learning, we need to have the space for students to move about, really get in and figure out what they're learning. Time, we're looking at a reimagined schedule. And so transitioning all of our students at the same time with that schedule is going to be really important for that to happen. When I talk about that full experience, it's also making sure that unified arts is a piece of that experience for our students. So we're not looking at students leaving the classroom to go to art class, but instead we're looking at the art teacher coming in and working with students as part of that interdisciplinary experience. And world language is a big topic of conversation that we've had. And there's a lot of conversation about that full exposure being so important in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And so we're recommending this full transition because to really fulfill this vision, we need to make sure that we have enough staff to make it happen. If we're having staff in 4 different configurations or multiple buildings, they're going to need to travel. We'll have to share them across buildings and content areas. So to truly actualize our vision of that interdisciplinary approach, we need to make sure that we have space, time, and configuration for that to happen. That curiosity is so important for our middle level learners to really, really be successful. In addition to that, this is a really interesting time. Megan had mentioned that she has a 6th grader. I have an 8th grader right now, and I know how interesting middle school can be. It's been a fun 3 years, but one thing that I'm seeing is the need for him to really be independent. And so for us, developing that intellectual independence for our middle school students is vastly important. And so we see this as an opportunity for our students to be leaders across the building, among each other. Our 8th graders have such a wonderful opportunity to be the first in that building, to be the leaders of that building, and to help mentor all the other students in the building. In addition to that, we are having a lot of conversations about the need for student leadership coaching, both in classroom and then also throughout the curriculum. Even maybe the possibility of a leadership class for our students beginning in 5th grade, because we know that that skill is very, very important. I talked a little bit about the schedule being something that we really needed to focus on. We believe that we need to have a set time every single day for students to have enrichment, intervention, and well-being. That would include clubs and activities. The committee feels strongly that every student should participate in some type of club or activity during the school day, so that would be built into that block of time. Also, mentoring and peer tutoring would happen during that time, and we would have the ability to have partnerships with our community. To make this happen, we need our specialists to be available, reading interventionists, we need IST people to be available, our gifted support teachers to be available. And so it's another reason why we feel very strongly that everybody at once is the most beneficial method for us to have our students receive the best experience possible. If we can only do it in a few grades, it's really not building that culture that we're trying to build in the building. And then finally, I had mentioned that we want every child to be in some type of clever activity, but we also see this as a huge opportunity for our students to have more chances to participate fully in extracurriculars. So we'll have 3 plays instead of 2, which means that we have more students have the ability to lead those types of things. We would have more students have the ability to lead our clubs and our sports and our activities. We have worked out an off-site sports plan for everything except for baseball during the 22-23 school year. So we are certain that if we have enough students to not have a combined team, we could have individual teams at all 3 of the schools, therefore having more leadership opportunities. And I know I'm talking a lot about that, but it is something that we really want to make sure we're fostering as we move our students through our middle school experience. So, we talked a lot about building relationships, cultivating curiosity, and developing intellectual independence. It's important to realize that all of these things build on top of each other, but they also work in tandem with one another. Our programmatic changes cannot be realized without a school culture that values a mission and a vision for our 5 through 8 middle school concept. For students to develop intellectual independence necessary to be successful in life and in school, they really do need the support in an equitable environment that supports rich and innovative programming. And for all of those reasons, we feel strongly that we should move our students into this transition plan. Let me go back one. As Megan mentioned, we did put out an infographic for the community. That is available for you on our website. There will be a link as well to this presentation. After our meeting tonight, tomorrow, the community, we're asking for feedback and questions and suggestions for us to consider. And so that will be open tomorrow all the way through June 1st. And we're expecting to ask the board for a vote on the June 14th meeting. Any questions? Or questions, better yet?
Thank you, Dr. McGuinn. Why don't we start down with Mr. Lee and then we can move.
Thank you. On slide 3, in scenario 3, you mentioned if we left the 8th graders, there would be overcrowding at BC, and the new middle school would be I guess, filled. I was just curious about what's the scale of the overcrowding at BC if we left the 8th graders there?
Do you know that answer, Megan?
I mean, there's overcrowding and then there's overcrowding. I was just,
Yeah,
if
right.
we decided to leave the 8th graders, what is the scale of the overcrowding?
Can you move over? I'm sure that Ms. Schaefer can answer that. Here. Yeah? Here, the last couple slides. See this one? Here. There you go. You're welcome for printing that out for me. See that?
This is scenario 3, you're
Yes,
saying?
scenario 3. The capacity for BC without modulars is 939, as indicated there. It's not actually indicated there, but the enrollment projected for that particular year is 1068. So it's 100.
1068
Correct.
with just the 8th graders staying?
Correct. Those are large classes. There's a bubble of enrollment in those particular classes, so
I see.
it's about 100 over capacity.
Okay.
I'm just curious, first of all, this just really excites me. I think it's gonna be amazing. I love the enthusiasm and the passion that both of you and Sarah Stout last week at the CCOB shared this presentation. I'm really excited about it, and I think that once people get there, they too will be excited. Can you speak a little bit about what kinds of activities you're going to do to help these third and fourth graders and fourth and fifth graders now connect with each other?
Chris, you want to do that? I could do it as well. Okay.
And then what you'll do once they're to keep the connection with the kids from the other middle schools that they're leaving, utilizing perhaps the cameras and the Zoom that we're using now.
I'm happy to speak to a little of that for sure. So we were looking to hire a principal, as you know, next year, prior to maybe even the middle of the year. So that principal will be integral in making sure that they connect with all of the students and provide experiences. If we can do any type of tours, obviously we're going to want to do that, but social gatherings will be a part of that. Making sure that students really connect together prior to arriving in the school will be essential. Visits to the schools, Gladwin, and to Penn Valley, I said that right? So is going to be Penwyn, I'm sorry. It will be really, really important to make sure that those students are connecting, but also we're moving fifth grades into all of our middle schools, right? And sixth grades into all of our middle schools. So it really is not just about a new middle school that we're talking about. The principals from the current middle schools will also need to visit. We'll bring students into our middle schools that are open right now as well. The experience needs to happen across all of our buildings, not just the new middle school, and making certain that we have some social gatherings as well will be important. So connecting with our HSAs, getting an HSA up and running for the new middle school is going to be essential, an essential piece of that as well, because we know they do a tremendous job of helping us have those connections with students, so we'll make sure they're involved in the conversations as well. You asked about keeping the connections, and you're right, Zoom is a beautiful way for that to happen. It's one of those things that this year, out of everything that's happened, it allows us to connect and allows us to do some really neat things. And so while we won't be doing it daily, hopefully, we still will be able to have those connections between students through that method. In addition to that, we do have some shared sports teams, so we'll see that happen as well, I'm sure. But even with our clubs, that connection is there because of the Zoom link that we could provide. So there'll be opportunities for that as well as we're moving along.
Great, thank you.
It's looking bad.
I think we should keep that in mind as we, not throw out the baby with the bathwater once we've moved past the COVID, but really use it to our advantage to really flatten the walls across the district.
I just have to make an announcement. Sometimes the baby and the bathwater go awry. We're having streaming issues right now. So just so, I don't know if we're having streaming issues. Does anybody know?
For those at home,
I didn't break it, I swear.
For those at home, the live stream is, we're having technical difficulties.
Okay.
It's just the stream on the website. The Zoom is working fine. It's just the live stream itself.
Thank you. Mr. Driscoll, do you have?
Thank you. So I guess I have just a quick comment more than a question of, we have modulars currently at Penwyn Elementary, Marion Elementary, and Bala-Cynwyd Middle School. I think that's the list of current modulars. So I just make this comment of, if some people would like Penwyn to be less crowded by moving the fifth grade out of Penwyn and moving them to BC or somewhere else, or if you don't move them out of BC as sixth and eighth graders, the modulars stay at Bala-Cynwyd. So the argument I'm trying to make here, not as well as I'd hoped so you can decrease enrollment at Penwyn in some of those scenarios. You do not help Bala-Cynwyd Middle School until later if you don't do scenario 4. And I find, and my argument to that is, if we only look at individual schools in any of this, that's not what our job is. Our job is to look at the entire district, to look at all the schools as they all fit together. So I'm generally supportive of this plan because I do think this is a district plan, the scenario 4. I think the other ones, well, I understand some of the issues therein, don't address district-wide issues. They might address an issue at one school, maybe another. They do so at the expense of a third school. And I think we need to be cautious of that. And that's why I can understand why, among other reasons, scenario 4 has some, at least from a facilities perspective, I see the benefits. I totally get the curriculum issues and the leadership issues, et cetera. But from a facilities issues, this one jumps at me. Like, this is a district-wide way to solve some of our issues. So that's just more of a comment, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Driscoll. Ms. Ekman?
Thanks. I have a few questions. I'll try to be quick, though. Thank you for the presentation, and clearly a lot of strategic thinking has gone into this whole plan. I just wanted to, first I wanted to ask about, for the current 6th graders who in 8th grade, I think they're probably the most impacted because their grade will be changing whether they stay or they go to the new middle school after 2 years with the same group of kids. And, I think there's lots of plans, and the district is great at transitions based on my experience so far already. I have no doubt that you'll make everyone feel comfortable and excited. For the kids who are not going to the new middle school, will you be doing the same sort of kind of team building? And is there any way that there could be some programs that maybe this 8th grade that's now split into 3 schools could still remain connected? You know what I'm saying? I don't know if there's like a joint curriculum project they could all do together, or once a quarter they could all get together in person somewhere to do some special activity. I think that might make people feel more comfortable, just because it's already been like for this grade in particular, a harsh end to their elementary school and then a harsh beginning to middle school due to COVID. It wasn't anyone's fault. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts about that. And then I have 2 more very quick questions. Sorry.
I actually think it's a great opportunity. Well, I can understand that there's transitions. It's a really neat opportunity for our 8th graders at the time that they're going to be in 8th grade next year. So I think it's an opportunity, and that's what we have to look at this as. But to your point, every one of our schools is going to change. This isn't really about a new middle school, although we know we're building a new middle school. Truly, all 3 middle schools are going to have a whole reconfiguration, right? So no, it's not going to look the same no matter which one of the schools you're in. So we definitely need to be thoughtful about that and make sure that we're planning for all of our schools, not one school in particular. We've been really thoughtful about making sure that our transition is a 5-8 transition for all 3 buildings and not one building. We do not talk about a new middle school in our conversations because realistically, all of our schools are transitioning. So to your point, we have to make sure that happens in all the schools, and we will make certain of that. As far as having them come back together, I think we're going to need to gauge where the kids are and what the principals feel like is the right decision at that point in time. But there are absolutely opportunities that we can offer to make sure that they can come back together if that's the right thing to do. So we will be able to make that happen if that's at that point in time what everybody feels like should be happening for our students.
Okay.
I think one of the things that COVID actually knocked some things in terms of a timeline off, but we're at the point now where we really do need an answer going forward so that we can develop and divert resources to solving some of those issues and building some of those understandings. And where there are some opportunities lost, there's some opportunities gained too, and some once-in-a-lifetime kinds of activities for the kids of the new school, choosing the mascot, doing some of those kinds of things. But at the same time, being very purposeful about when we gave our strategic plan to our designers, our architects, we said, this isn't a passing phase. You need to look at this carefully, and you need to reflect that in the design. And when we got that back, it was, okay, now we got to make sure that the other two middle schools, while they may not have the same architectural design, the programmatic issues, and that's something that was pointed out to me early in my tenure in Lower Merion, that we needed to be purposeful about programmatic opportunities across the district. Those program opportunities are there. I think that over time, we need to look at the configuration and some of the architectural designs of our current middle schools to see if we can't have a situation where teachers aren't necessarily fighting against the four walls, and that they have some opportunities. I know in Welsh Valley, when we brought Heidi Hayes Jacobs into the district early on and talked about some of these kinds of things, Chris went out and started putting together furniture to make that aspiration a reality. And Sarah's been doing that in Bala Cynwyd since she's been there. So I echo Alexis's point that this is not about just this. The 5-8 middle school gave us an opportunity to say, okay, now we can rethink what we're doing, and we can rethink it in a reflection of the strategic plan for not only 5-8, but for K4. So this is like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Well,
maybe twice, but once for all of us right here, presumably. Okay, thank you. I really appreciate those thoughtful answers. So 2 more quick questions. I love the idea of making clubs and activities, I don't know if that includes sports, mandatory, like every season for kids in middle school. As anyone who's parented a preteen, it can be hard sometimes due to all kinds of factors to get them to opt in to certain clubs that are offered, and there are a lot of amazing clubs offered. Is there any way that the district could consider doing that next year, before this start? I don't know if there's capacity or enough slots or clubs, but my experience has been if you're doing that in middle school, it's much easier to continue in some fashion in high school. And so getting kids in the mode of you're expected to participate and be part of the school community besides in class is a very positive thing to start early. And it benefits them a lot in high school if they have done it in middle school. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I can appreciate that. One of our biggest issues is the constraint of time within the schedule, which is why that will be a priority item for us. We have at the next board meeting a contract with Michael Reddick for the middle school schedule specifically, and he asks us to have priority items that are musts in the schedule as he creates some options for us. And one of the things is going to be that block of time. Right now we do have a learn block at our school, but it's at the end of the school day, so there's a constraint there, and that's why for us changing the schedule is going to be really important to make this happen. I don't see sports being a piece of that, only because that happens after the school day, so it's harder to mandate that.
Right.
But we do feel like it's so important for our students.
Yeah. I mean, it would be great to have either reading Olympic, some academic clubs just be mandatory. Here's the menu of 8, and you have to choose one. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox on that.
No, I'm sorry, just one more point. So we have committees right now for 5-8, and we're moving into new committees in June, and one of our committees will be extracurriculars and athletics, and so that'll be fleshed out moving forward.
Especially in this year where I think everyone spent way too much time on their phones, anything to minimize phone time after school.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's absolutely critical that we add more opportunities for outdoor athletics and recreation for kids. I think it's really, really problematic that our field space and our athletic space is so limited that you can't really participate until the 7th and 8th grade.
Right.
What a wonderful thing to be able to have intramural activities for 5th and 6th graders, that they could have specific kinds of activities. It's critical to improve that opportunity for kids.
I agree. Final question. and I may have missed this at the curriculum committee meeting where maybe this was talked about, but for world language, what is going to be different about world language now?
We're actually, one of the new committees as well will be a K-8 committee. I can tell you that there is a definite leaning towards offering world language 5 through 8 every day. That's not currently what happens. I just don't know what that would look like from a FLES perspective as well. And so that's what we have to really flush out. But our staff is really advocating for 5, 6, 7, 8 being every single day as like a core subject, like you would take reading, or you would take math, or you would take social studies for all of our students. So again, though, that's where we're looking at this point, but I can't tell you definitively where we're going to recommend in the end what world language will look like.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moore?
Thank you. And no question, but I've had an opportunity to see this presentation at CCOB and again here tonight, and just want to really commend all of the staff and administration on the hard work. And I know that this process has been very involved, and we've been debating and thinking about these issues for a very long time. And I think what you've presented is very thoughtful and really comprehensive in your approach. And so I just want to really commend all of you on your hard work and thoughtfulness that went into this.
Thank you.
Dr. Gilbert?
Thank you. I just want to say also that this is incredibly exciting because we had, our very, a very long and inclusive process around our strategic plan, which was really the idea of moving into a very kind of progressive, sort of, interdisciplinary and kind of transformative curriculum. In fact, the middle school interdisciplinary programs were some of the reasons, because many kids flourish in that environment. And so I'm really excited about this. I'm excited about the opportunity to have this newly designed school. And I do know that the school district has a really wonderful, wonderful way of dealing with transitions. I do understand, people's concerns about the 8th graders. I have to say that the high school piece of it, I have 2 kids who went to the school that didn't have their middle school friends, and I was very interested in how that was going to work out, and found that most of the kids in our community have a lot of friendships across schools because of sports and because of religious school and all kinds of other activities. And I do think this is going to open up opportunities for our 8th graders at all of the schools. So I'm not so concerned about kids going from one middle school into a different high school. I've also watched as, kids shift friendships regardless of where people are as the kids get older, or they keep friendships across the schools. I know that I've read the community comments, and I know that some, families are concerned, particularly about our students who might be more introverts, who might have a few friends, and then those friends go to a different school. So I'm wondering if you could just talk about the ways in which teachers and counselors, middle school counselors are special people, how those kinds of situations might be made easier for kids in that situation. I mean, maybe Chris, I was just going to say,
I think Chris Hall would be much better at having this conversation with you. Yes, I'm going to ask Chris to do that.
Experience.
Sorry, Dr. Gilbert, was the question specifically about how we're prepared to support?
I'm just saying, I know that there are families who are concerned, particularly with kids who will be moving in 8th grade, who may be, more introverted I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with being introverted, so I want to be very clear about that. But, kids who maybe aren't involved in the same amount of activities and who have, one or two close friends. Like I said, my experience around the high school transition, when those kids go off to high school, is they stay in contact, they socialize together and all the rest of it. But, for any kid in any middle school situation where, they're kind of stressed around the holistic needs of kids, can you talk a little bit about what the middle school experience is like?
Absolutely. Well, to speak directly to that, Mr. Copeland just did, I think, creating another 8th grade class, a class where students will have an opportunity to be founding leaders of a building, is a really golden opportunity to allow students to lean into new leadership opportunities. We in the middle school model currently, and what you'll hear will be recommended will be that we maintain well-being time during the day, so an advisory model where there's a small group of students that are known by a caring adult, their homeroom teacher. That homeroom teacher, all of our homeroom teachers in the middle school, where we're part, we have a really comprehensive plan in place to build their capacity with restorative practices training. And so there's a lot of proactive relationship building, community circles. We start early in the year with low stakes circles, which lots of icebreakers and get to know you activities. We eventually create a really safe space with norms where we can deepen discussion and have really rich, meaningful discussion around the complexities of what it means to be an adolescent, which let's face it, in 2021 it's very challenging. We also have, in addition to one grade level counselor at each grade level that loops with students up through the grade levels, we also have a wellness counselor at each building in addition to that, as well as a half-time social worker. So there are a lot of supports currently built in, and I'm really excited to come back at some future date to give you an update on the recommendations that are coming out of the 5-8 committee. I think what you'll see is we have a lot of recommendations to even augment what we're offering currently.
Thank you so much. And I just remembered I'd also been reading some comments about people concerned around Penn Win students and friendships with students from Gladwin because of the drive. And, as somebody from Narberth who has kids who had friends in Gladwin and, parents do those drives and do sort of do the, hangouts and sleepovers and all that kind of stuff. That hasn't been, from my own experience in that situation, a barrier to kids' friendships, for sure.
Right.
One of the things, following up on what you were going to say, when we did the survey with students and asked things like, do you have an adult that you can go to and so forth. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so happy about the recommendation for the extracurriculars. And the high school, who are the ones? It's the coach, it's the teacher who because they get to work with the kids in robotics or after, and they get to have that more casual conversation about what interests them and how they can work with them. And so to have a kid have a place like that to go and to find like friends with like activities where they can get their, quote unquote 10,000 hours of the thing that they really want to do, I think works to that benefit. Also, I think with the growing enrollment, with the number of people who are coming into the community, really completely leaving another community, not with any friends, but coming into Lower Merion, our teachers and principals and counselors have had to, over the years, really be very purposeful about bringing on kids who may not feel comfortable about going into a new place. Thankfully, they'll be going for most of them with kids that they already know and have known for some time, but that's purposeful. Secondly, or finally, I'd say one of the things we know that Kimberly Frazier and her people are working with is to make sure that there's a continuity of services with kids with IEPs, and to make sure that that process is intact and thoughtful.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate those answers, and I do want to say that I do understand the anxieties that we've been reading about in community comments, and I wasn't able to be at the curriculum committee meeting, so I don't know if there were folks there, but I do understand that, and I do think that, you know, because it's affecting everybody and because the kids are going to be mixing, I think there's a lot of opportunity for developing, you know, friendships across different schools. And I think, you know, I think I mean, we've had these discussions before, but like following the same group of kids all the way through also has some disadvantages, and being able to sort of mix up the kids also gives kids an opportunity to meet new people and to sort of reinvent themselves sometimes. So I think, like I said, I do understand the anxieties, and I think for any individual student there, that, you know, there may need to be, you know, more assistance, and I think any school will be giving that. But I do think there are opportunities in this, and I have seen again at the high school level where the kids, you know, really do socialize across the schools, and, you know, then you get to the fun part where they're driving and you have to worry about them driving around with each other, but that's a whole other story. Anyway, thank you for all the work that, I know you were on the original strategic planning, so this is really, really very exciting. Yeah,
Really
thank
exciting.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. So I asked a lot of questions at the curriculum committee meeting. So today I thought I would focus on understanding and acknowledging sort of the big picture and the need to, you know, there's so many pieces, right? There's the logistical piece there's the culture within the school, and if you have a school with that's only half full with 5th and 6th graders, but it's half empty, sort of the detriment of that. But I really appreciate the thoughtfulness and the acknowledgement that it can be hard, and it may be hard for some of our students to make this switch, you know, if we go ahead with this recommendation. And so I appreciate the thoughtfulness around it, and some of the things that struck me today were around, for all of the students, you know, when you're in 5th grade, you're sort of like the big people on campus, right? And so if you have a year where the students are moving 4th and 5th, the very specific acknowledgement that community building and those opportunities will exist for the 5th graders and the 4th graders, right? So it's not like those 4th graders are going to be lost and they're going to miss out on that. It might look a little bit differently, but that's part of the process, and I really appreciate that. I also was really excited about that idea of the daily blocks of time for activities in the middle school, sort of in this new reimagined. And in my head, it sort of sounded a little bit like a middle school version of Lunch and Learn, where it gave you an opportunity during the school day to do some things. And I think especially if you're involved in sports, which are after school, this gives kids that want to play sports also an opportunity, because a lot of times just timing-wise, it can be difficult if everything's after school to join something, because even if you just play soccer in the fall, you know, some kids are then uncomfortable starting, you know, to go to Science Olympiad starting in November because they missed the beginning of the year. And so I think that opportunity to have some of that during the school day is really exciting. And it also, the flip side of that is that kids that really want to do Science Olympiad, this might let them run track also, which maybe they wouldn't have chosen to do otherwise. So I think that's really great. Follow up on Ms. Ackman's comments around sort of activities that could be done to sort of commingle again those kids that maybe, you know, that they used to be in class with at the other middle schools, I think is a really great opportunity. And I just wanted to follow up on the world language. I know that sort of that's a work in progress, but that idea of really reimagining what that might look like, I think is really exciting. So I guess my whole point is that I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the acknowledgement and the intentionality around how to really be there for the students, acknowledging that this is a change. And I think that that's really a positive, and I would encourage just sort of constant thinking about it, but also sharing of that information, because I think that that really helps people feel more comfortable. And it might be bit by bit, but I think every little bit helps. So thank you very much. Sure. Mr. Copeland, did you? Good. All right. So next on our agenda is audience recognition. At this time, we will open the meeting to public comment. Ms. LaPera, if there's anyone who signed up for public comment that's here tonight, come up to the podium. We have designated spots. I'd also like to take a minute and remind you that everyone doing public comment should be a district resident, and that each person is given 3 minutes. And we ask that you keep your mask on during public comment. If you're joining us via Zoom, you should be seeing a 10-minute timer appear on your screen, and the chat feature is being opened. Please know that whether you're joining us in person or via Zoom, please begin your question or comment with your full name and where you reside within the district, especially those using the chat feature. And again, it doesn't need to be a specific address, just sort of a neighborhood. That's an important piece for your comment to be shared. Thank you.
Ms. Stillman, you can go right ahead.
Hello, my name is Michelle Stolman. My daughter attends first grade at Penn Wynne. We live in Ardmore. This is her first year attending Lower Merion Public School. I'm here to talk about issues I've experienced with custody differences this year. Custody difference is a phrase I've coined from personal experience. It is when parents or guardians of a child have a court order which determines legal and/or physical custody parameters. I clarify families with custody orders as having custody differences by their counterpointed families who do not require a third-party person or legal entity to determine how their children live, learn, and grow. Lower Merion School District does not have guidelines or rules and regulations in relation to families with custody court orders for school-related decisions. Time frame allowance for court process and temporary decision guidelines are absent from Lower Merion School District. In my experience this March 2021, Lower Merion provided 1 week for parents or guardians to decide on a new school pathway, different from what was offered in August 2020. 1 week is an insufficient amount of time to comply with legal process in family court. Lower Merion School District did not provide temporary options, did not contact the ruling judge for clarification, provided no understanding for their demands of an immediate amended court order, as well as being non-responsive to several of my emails. This issue does not only affect school pathway, but any school activity-related decision, like sports, advanced placement, trips, and more. This will affect my daughter and family for the next 11 years, and many others for years to come. A solution: new rules and regulations to be founded to protect against discrimination of families with custody differences. Schools should provide enough time for legal proceedings to take place and/or provide modifications, exceptions, and options until said proceedings conclude with a verdict. For example, if equal legal custody exists between parents or guardians, related school decisions to be made during each parent's time. Lower Merion School District is one of the top school districts in the state, yet at this time provide no guidance for the population of families who are processed through the court system in order to determine school decisions for their children. I implore Lower Merion School District to take steps to become an inclusive and cooperative school district for all families, and to not discriminate against families with custody court orders and the process they must go through. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll ask Mrs. Schaefer to speak to the issue of policy. Thank you. Mrs. Schaefer is going to come up.
With regard to, I think, the issues that have been raised here around custody issues, we try to work directly with families and address their concerns as they're sort of typically addressed through the court system. We don't have, our policy is to do just that, is to follow the guidance of the courts as it relates to those types of matters. And we work closely with our legal counsel when those issues arise as well.
Thank you.
Am I able to respond to that?
We don't have a...
I would recommend if you want to reach out to me directly after the meeting, we can speak directly.
Sure, that will be lovely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Ms. LaPera, how much time is remaining on the... thank you.
We have about 4 minutes. Ms. Klein, there's only one question in there, so if we wanted to have Amy begin reading, and then if anything else comes in the next couple minutes, we can just add it in, if you would like to do that.
Okay.
Good evening. We have one comment, and now there's another one in the chat. The first is from Matt Bergheiser of Penwyn. Number one, inherent in the plan is the fact that Penwyn kids who live the farthest from the new school will be asked to give up as much as 30 to 40 extra minutes a day of sleep, extracurricular time, homework time, etc. for extended bus travel. What specific steps are being taken to guarantee the shortest possible bus routes for these students? And number two, under the transition scenario, kids at ages 11, 12, 13, and 12, 13, 14, oops, wait, my chat just disappeared, will be asked to attend 3 different schools during these formative years. Then many will split from existing social groups to enter high school. We are not hearing enough specifics as to the support systems to help these kids make difficult and repeated transitions. The next comment.
Let me answer. Okay. So in terms of the extra time, no matter whenever a route is determined, the attempt is to stay within a 30-minute time frame. Traffic can change things around, but the intent is to engineer it for 30 minutes. I think what we've heard tonight is a pretty good basis for how those transitions will be handled. And that's an ongoing planning process. But I was impressed with what I heard this evening and what the groups have been bringing to me on a regular basis about planning.
Okay, the next comment does not have a place of residence, so I will skip that one unless I hear back. Ruth Jenkin from Wynwood says, have you considered team teaching in order for a team of teachers who each know the students and the ability to discuss the pros and cons of student needs? With the cost of the new middle school and buses, why do we need to spend so much money?
Sure, I understand. The question is, will there be teaming?
Team teaching, which I believe we already...
So we don't need as many teachers.
There will be there's going to be team teaching, as I know it, a team of teachers with a common group of students.
The next one is from Alana Weinstein. It's from Ken Brownstein, Wynwood, PA. Has there been consideration given to allowing parents to choose which middle school their kids will go to if they provide transportation, such that they won't have to switch schools multiple times during their middle school years?
There's currently a policy for an attendance waiver, but there are specific criteria for that. The criteria doesn't allow for choice. It specifies certain reasons for attendance zone requests.
The next question is from Elizabeth Haley in Penwyn. 1, you have talked about the challenge of buses transporting students within common zones, but that's already being done with high school, and it seems to work out just fine. Why is it different for middle schools? It would be 2 years maximum, so even if it's not ideal, it would be better than the not ideal situation of bouncing them around the district. 2, we were promised research into how this will affect students' mental health for the current 5th and 6th graders. Has this research been conducted? If not, why? If there isn't research available, have you considered that it's because this is such an awful idea that no other school district has ever considered doing this to its students? I hear a lot about buildings and utilization, but not enough about the mental health of students. This is not the action of a world-class school district. It's callous and harmful. Again, a second comment. The gentleman identifies himself as the parent of a 6th grader from BCMS without a town. Is that okay? So there are actually 2 comments from Sean McMurtry. What alternative options are being looked at for sports fields for the new middle school to avoid the clear cutting of 500 mature native trees at 1835, 1800 Montgomery? I have not heard about actual community involvement, so are there behind-the-scenes negotiations at this time? Is Lmsd interested in saving those trees given the environmental impact? And then he further asks, 6th grader currently at BCMS who is very upset about spending this last year of middle school at a new school given that he just got acclimated. And that is the conclusion of the comments.
In terms of, we've offered the people from the township that if they can find other fields, we'd be interested to look at them. No one has come up with anything that I'm aware of. In terms of fields, we're looking at Gladwin as a use for a period of time, the Proving Grounds, but those are all temporary situations as opposed to the fields being a permanent asset to the community, its athletic program, its recreation for kids.
And I will just add, and I believe that I've mentioned this before in prior meetings, is that various members of the school board have been meeting with township commissioners discussing a variety of options. And I've suggested to people in the public, if you have ideas on alternate opportunities, please let us know. To date, we've not been able to identify anything that is feasible and viable, but just to know that those conversations are going on. Thank you, Ms. Buckman, for reading those comments. We do have one recommended action on tonight's agenda. Mr. Copeland, I will pass that on to you.
Thank you, Ms. Klein. I recommend that the Board of School Directors approves the attached employment agreement with Felicity Hanks, Esquire, as Human Resources Manager effective July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2024.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Our very awkward setting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Finally, just some upcoming meeting dates and some announcements. Our next regular business board meeting will be on Monday, May 17th at 8 p.m. located here at the Lower Merion High School Auditorium, also available via live stream and Zoom. We also have a number of committee meetings coming up that are all being held via Zoom. On May 12th, we have the Finance Committee focusing on curriculum and instruction budget review at 8:30 a.m. Also on May 12th in the evening is the Ad Hoc Committee meeting for Equity and Anti-Racism at 7 p.m. That meeting will be also used as one of the public forums for the superintendent search focusing on those opportunities. So it's an opportunity for public comment. On May 13th is the Facilities and Purchasing Committee meeting at 8:30 a.m. And on May 19th is the Communications Committee at 7 p.m. And again, those committee meetings will be via Zoom. And also, before we end tonight, I'd like to remind everyone about some upcoming events. The CSC Spring Social is coming. Please join the Committee for Special Education for a Spring Social, virtually, of course, on Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. CSC promises to make it fun with bingo prizes and a lot of laughs with other people who understand the challenges you face every day. Also, tomorrow morning, Tuesday, May 11th at 9:30 a.m., Mr. Copeland will be speaking on the state of the district at the ISC Hot Topic meeting. More information on both of these events can be found in your HSA newsletters. And finally, but most certainly not least, the board very much values the input of our community as we move forward with our superintendent search. Please take a few minutes to fill out the online survey, and if you're able, please also attend one of the public input Zoom meetings held throughout this week and weekend. Information on both of these are available on the Lmsb website. Thank you, and the meeting is now adjourned.